Good evening, everybody. Today is July 30th, and the Board of Commissioners special meeting is called to order at 6 p.m. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Black.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Weinstein.
Here.
Commissioner Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Douther.
Present.
The floor is now open for public comment. Public participation is encouraged. If you're addressing the commission, please step up to the podium, state your name and full address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. And you can speak on any item that is not on the agenda, and you'll be allowed to speak on that item after that item comes up.
Good evening. My name's Chuck Dillon. I live 559 Lillian Drive, and I had understood that we supposedly were going to be getting buoys out on the Gulf to protect our swimmers. I saw that there were like 8 or 10 of them put in down at John's Pass, and they were all kind of like all jammed up together, but nothing on the rest of the beach. I thought that was going to be addressed, and supposedly by the 4th of July. There's still jet skiers that people rent from John's Pass that have no idea what they're doing, and we should protect our swimmers, and I thought we were supposed to be doing that.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Yes.
John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road, Madeira Beach. We are supposed to be good stewards of the city's money. There are a number of things I want to find out about. One, we started undergrounding the utilities on Gulf Boulevard. It stopped. What happened to $1 million+ from pennies for Pinellas on that? What happened to putting things out for bid? The $340,000 for a generator. The cybersecurity account. What happened to putting these things out for bid? We borrowed $15 million and put it in a bank account, and it's doing nothing but running up interest charges for us. Why didn't we get a construction loan and draw on it as money was needed? It makes no sense to be paying interest on $15 million. Why have you stifled the growth in this city to stop our tax base from growing? The Carnes project was delayed for over 2 years because y'all didn't want your view blocked. That's revenue that this city could have already been bringing in. Mr. Dothert says he doesn't want any growth in Madeira Beach. He also said $50,000 for a forensic audit for the marina was just a drop in the bucket. It's not a drop in the bucket. I would venture to say revenue in the marina will be down this year because of what y'all did to the fuel discounts. What happened to fiscal responsibility? We had a party that cost over $4,000 during the election. It seemed like nothing more than a city-paid campaign party to me. Not only that, you spent $6,000 for artwork from that artist that's hanging in the back rooms of City Hall right now. We need to make some tough decisions. We need to start being responsible for the city's money. I am totally against the millage rate being raised, and it is being raised because of incompetence by some of our city commissioners. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak?
Mark Merrill, 581 Crystal Drive. I just want to take a second to thank the board for doing the audit of the marina. That was probably the best money we've ever spent Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Floor is now closed for public comment. The next item on the agenda, or the only item, is setting the maximum millage rate for 2020. City Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, residents. What we're here tonight is one of the first steps in the budget process. We're required under the provisions of the Department of Revenue to set what they call a maximum millage rate. So as we go through the budget process, whatever that rate is, we cannot go over that rate once we set it. So generally, as we go through the process, it's set higher than where we want to be. So it kind of sets a benchmark, and it's customarily been done ever since I can recall on the budgets in Florida. So I'm going to turn the floor over to our Finance Director, Walt Pierce, and he's going to take you through some of the information that he has in relationship to setting the maximum millage rate.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, just a brief summary. We are here, as the interim city manager indicated, to set the maximum millage rate for the FY 2020 budget. And at the July 9th meeting, the board unanimously approved resolution authorizing the issuance of a capital improvement revenue bond series 2019 in the amount of $15,063,000. The cost of this loan, the closing of this loan took place on July 11th, and the city received the funds that same day and is currently earning 2.40%. The interest rate on the loan is 3.07%. The payments on this loan will be approximately $1,008,000 each year over a 20-year term of this loan. The Stormwater Fund on its own cannot support this annual payment, and the general fund will need to help. A millage rate increase will help offset the cost of the bond payments by allowing the city to cover expenses currently paid from non-ad valorem revenues. The finance staff has calculated the amount that's necessary to make this transfer each year for 20 years, and that calls for an increase from the current 2.2 mils to 2.75 mils to generate the necessary amount to transfer to the Stormwater Fund each year. Barring any significant events, if this is the millage rate that is approved going forward, it could remain the same for the next couple of years, barring nothing significant happens. Would like to, at this time, just address a couple of questions and answers that we've heard from staff, people in the community, and even the board. And there's 8 here that I jotted down, and I'm sure there's going to be more in the future, and as they come up, we'll try to answer these as factually as we possibly can, as I'm about to now. One question was, why in the previous stormwater debt issuance, Series 2015, was there no millage increase needed? This was 4 years ago for Series 2015 that was issued in the amount of $6.2 million. This was for much-needed stormwater capital improvements for Boca Ciega, Rex Place, and 137th Avenue areas within the city. At the time, the Stormwater Fund had no other loans outstanding, and through stormwater fees could certainly support the principal and interest payments that average $500,000 per year on this loan without any assistance. The Stormwater Fund, through gradual increases to fees, can continue to support this loan by itself and ensure these future payments on this loan through to maturity, which is 10/1/2030. However, the fund alone cannot support another loan, especially one that requires $1 million annually for the next 20 years. The second question that we heard, why can't grants, as used in the past, especially from Southwest Florida Management District, assist in funding the $15 million stormwater loan. City staff, including the city's engineer, are actively looking at possible swift mud grants for the three major areas, Crystal Island, Parsley, and Marguerite, and areas surrounding Johns Pass. These are the areas that the $15 million these areas will benefit from the $15 million. The projects will be eligible for cooperative funding through SwiftMud. However, the approval process takes at least 1 year after the application is submitted. During the time between submittal and awarding the grant, construction costs could rise, which could reduce the positive financial impact of the fixed grant amount. For example, the initial budget for 137th Avenue project was $935,000, with cooperative funding of $400,000. Increased construction costs over time have brought the total price tag to $1.3 million, which is an increase of $373,591. Almost all of the $400,000 is being taken up by increased costs. So while the city remains steady, willing, and able to accept grant funds of projects, it should be noted that changes in construction costs can eat into grant dollars. Another good example is Rex Place project, which initially was proposed to cost $600,000, but due to increased construction costs again, the final bill was $1,028,196. Why borrow $15 million all at one time instead of borrowing smaller separate amounts over the next 3 to 4 years? And some of that question came up just recently. The examples of 137th Avenue and project and Rex Place project, as mentioned, as I just mentioned, have taught us some serious financial lessons. Not only rising construction costs, but finding good qualified contractors is an increasing challenge for the city. There are 5 specific reasons why borrowing the whole amount is a better deal for the city now. Borrowing the whole amount needed for these crucial areas allows the city's engineer flexibility in starting these projects simultaneously with different contractors, not waiting for one project to complete and starting another. The city, following a recommendation from its financial advisor, took advantage of a very low interest rate, 3.07%, on this loan. Because the city acquired this loan at a very low interest rate, we are now sheltered from any type of economic downturn and rate increase that may occur in the future. By borrowing the whole amount now that's needed, the city saves on costs of issuance, which can average over $50,000 for each individual loan. Borrowing the whole amount now needed assures the community that the city is also serious about completing these projects. And that's one of the things that we heard about the Crystal Island folks when they came in here in February, March. You've been promising us to do this all these years, and there's been no funds, nothing allocated to do it. Number 4, why wasn't there more transparency from the city's finance director that a millage rate increase would be necessary in order to support the annual payments needed for this $15 million loan? The Board of Commissioners at the April 23rd workshop agreed with the recommendation from our financial advisor to pay for the stormwater improvements projects with a 15 or 20 million loan. Prior to that decision, during the meetings in February and March with residents, as well as public meetings with the Board of Commissioners, the need for this project and how much to pay for it was discussed in detail. At the April 23rd workshop, the Director of Finance indicated to the board that funding these projects and other needs is going to be difficult if we don't increase something. The Director also indicated that balancing the budget was going to be very difficult ahead of this, and increasing the millage is almost guaranteed. These are quotes from the Beach Beacon, May 1st. The Director stated it's not a question of if, it's how much the millage will rise. At the June 27th joint workshop with the Board and Budget Review Committee, the Director of Finance, along with the city's financial advisor, articulates specifically that the millage rate of 2.75 was needed to support the $1 million payments each year. Why can't the parking revenue, especially after June 2018, increase of 50 cents be enough to cover the required payment for this $15 million loan. The parking fee revenue for the general fund, not including Archibald Fund, for FY 2020 is estimated to generate at least or over $2,042,900, and we hope it's going to increase more than that. Raising the parking fee another 75 cents to $3.25 would be needed to offset the cost of the bond payment and allow the city to cover the expenses currently paid from non-ad valorem revenues. However, as the city has seen from Hurricane Irma and last year's red tide incident, parking revenue is not a guarantee. Revenues from ad valorem are pretty much guaranteed at least 95%. Has the city looked at making budget cuts as an alternative generating funds in order to make this loan payment? The existing FY 2020 budget draft document reflects a bare bones budget. Making cuts to allow for an annual payment of $1 million would have a very significant effect on services and is not realistic. For example, and I'm only mentioning this an example, and I know I'm going to get cards and letters about this, but for example, eliminating the $840,000 recreation center budget for FY 2020, we would still result in a shortfall of $159,800 still needed to make the required $1 million payment. 7, the city's millage rate increases to 2.7500 for the FY 2020 budget. Would another increase be needed for FY 2021? No. Barring any unforeseen emergency that could be paid for with other funds, there would not be a need to raise the millage again. And the 2.7500 mills would remain the same for the FY 2021 budget. And finally, number 8, how does the city staff anticipate dealing with future stormwater projects that would result or require another millage rate increase in the future as well? The city's engineer has estimated the need for another $15 million in stormwater projects in about 4 years from now. These are identified currently in the unfunded 5-year CIP. There will be time to proactively prepare for the acquisition of grants. However, the city needs to look at raising the stormwater fees as well as establishing stormwater impact fees. These revenue streams could be contributing or contribute to the stormwater fund reserve and preserve and prepare for future projects. Furthermore, the city's lobbyist needs to be aware of these future stormwater projects, and in partnership with the city manager and staff, continue to seek state funding support. So it is the recommendation of staff and the Budget Review Committee that the maximum millage rate for the FY 2020 budget be increased to 2.75 mils, which is necessary to make this payment each year. There is as this slide indicates, there is 2 options available. Increase the FY 2020 millage rate to 2.50 mils and followed by another increase in FY 2021 to 2.75 mils, or increase the FY 2020 millage rate to 2.75 mils with no increase planned for FY 2021. Whatever we do, the 2021 budget needs to reflect a millage rate of 2.75. That's pretty much a fact. The other slide that just wanted to show is the impact on an average, what the millage rate impact increase of 2.50 would have on an average Madeira Beach property tax bill. An average home tax value of $350,000, less the homestead exemption and bringing it to $300,000. The present 2.2 mils would generate $660. Raising it to $250 would raise it $750, and the difference would be $90 a year or $750 a month. raising it to 275 and the impact that would have on the tax bill of a property of 350,000, which is an average home taxable value, less the homestead exemption, the average adjusted tax value of 300,000, that would generate at 2.75, $825, and basically an increase of 165 a year, 1365 a month. The next chart here, I thought this would be interesting. Presently, the tax rate right now that people pay, 39.3% go to the school board, 30% goes to Pinellas County, and it shows you that Madeira currently is at 12.8% of that. And with the millage increase of 2.75, that 12.8% for Madeira would go up to 14% as part of that. Lastly, I just wanted to indicate some other municipalities around this area and what their millage rate is. The city of Gulfport is 4.0390. The city of Treasure Island, which is going to increase, is presently 3.4368. City of South Pasadena is 3.500, and the city of St. Pete Beach is 3.1500. So even with this increase from 2.2 to 2.75, the city still wouldn't be in that group as far as what other comparable cities nearby have as their millage rate.
Walt, I have a question for you. I'm just curious, and maybe you can just kind of enlighten me a little bit on this. Why is Al Courier, the civil engineer, looking for grants for us? He's a contractor with the city. Wouldn't this just be the staff's responsibility?
I'm sorry, I didn't. Could you repeat that for me?
Okay. You mentioned on one of the pages that you said the civil engineer was also checking into grants for us regarding the projects. Since he's just a contractor, is it his responsibility to look for grants for us or just the city staff?
No, it's city engineer plus staff that are working together to try to see what grants that we can get from SwiftMud and the county and the state.
Okay, I was just curious because since he was just a contractor with the city, I didn't know that was be part of his responsibility.
That's not totally his responsibility. It's him and staff working together. Some of the existing grants that we've already received from SwiftMud, we still have to do reports on those, and sometimes we get emails saying, hey, we need a report on this, and we work with Al in getting some of that done. Some of the stormwater projects, Boca Ciega, Rex Place, and 137th, once it's done, is still SwiftMud still wants quarterly updates of the progress. And a lot of that is done with Al, but with staff support.
Okay, then since the project is starting then, can we still get grants once it starts? Or is this something that has to be in place before the project starts?
I think we are working to see if we can get SwiftMud grants that might be on the back end of some of these projects. Some of these projects that Al has identified that pertain to the 15 million, if it doesn't, he's in the process right now to determine, and he shared this with the board, of determining those areas where we cannot get reimbursement because we don't qualify. And I was just talking to him today, and it's those areas that we will tackle first. But in the meantime, some of those areas on the back end that are maybe a year or two away, he is certainly going to be submitting for, along with staff support, for grants if it's available. So it's not like we're not going to do it. I did mention in one of the slides, the longer you wait in getting some of these grants, it's almost a double-edged sword. It looks good, but you wait for it, And while you're waiting, the cost for construction increase. So the city has learned a lesson, a financial lesson on that. Some of these things we can't wait on, and the longer we wait, the worse the situation is going to be.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly, those projects that are on the tail end of the CIP, which are presently unfunded, which is another 15 million, certainly we need to start now in attacking how we're going to fund that instead of waiting another couple of years. We can't wait. We have to continue to see that, around the corner and keep planning for it. And so, I think there's a lot of effort just recently with the interim city manager and talking to, a consultant. We need to start on impact fees for stormwater. Look at the stormwater fees and see if a possible increase there. And also engage our lobbyist that this is a need that we have. And, we need to be campaigning for that right now. So, one of the things is, and I think in the past, we waited for these projects. We didn't do anything while they were going on. And I wish we had started earlier on this, actually. I've been here 2 years, and I wish we actually started sooner than this in tackling this. We can't, the longer we wait, and again, the construction cost and the rise in construction costs, that's an expensive lesson to see. We can't wait. We can't wait so that these costs keep increasing so that we face more of a financial impact down the road. And that's being good stewards of the city's money.
Okay, you did mention the interim city manager, and those of you who have not met him, this is Bob Daniels, and I'm sure he would love for you to stop by and visit him anytime. Okay. We're glad to have you.
And as Walt mentioned, we know that this isn't going to be the finish of our repaving and drainage efforts. And we are making those inroads, and you'll see when we set the priorities for the next legislative session on what we're going to be asking for, we're going to be aggressive. And that's one of the commitments I got from our lobbyist, that we definitely are going to be seeking other funds and other sources of funds. So it's kind of leaving no rock unturned.
No, I have a question. Well, you did, and you did address this, and I'm not picking on you because I just, where my heartburn has always been is the fact that we've gotten way ahead of where we're at. We should have been looking at, you're actually answering my question in number 8 about what we're going to do in 5 years from now or 4 years from now. There'll be plenty of time to proactively start to prepare for the acquisition of grants. Why weren't we doing that 2 years ago? I mean, we knew these projects were coming up. We had this long laundry list of things that we wanted to do, and we were running out of time. I mean, now we're 40 some odd years since some of the paving projects. So why weren't we proactively looking for this? And now you're saying it's going to be a year before we hear from SwiftMud. Have we submitted the application to SwiftMud? I mean, we have a loan. We've already approved a loan. We got money in the bank, and we haven't even done the proper steps as far as trying to acquire help in order to do this. And the other thing is, and Bob just brought it up about the city lobbyist. Is he aware of our current project, and why hasn't he been working on funding for this over the past 2 years? Again, I think we've just been kind of painted in a corner here tonight, and I don't think really, this is going to be a pretty easy vote, because I don't think we have a choice. We already have the money, we already have this, so we're basically forced to raise the millage rate in order to pay for these things. So, and Bob addressed this the other day, and I thought he did a really good job of it. In the future, we're going to have a comprehensive plan in front of us that we know, not only, okay, we're going to need this much money for this, but let's figure out how we're going to pay for it before we start signing off on the dotted line. That's where my heartburn is, and I just wanted to, again, state that. I mean, we got to go forward with it. We are where we are. These roads need to be done. Delayed maintenance costs more. I agree with everything he said as far as that's concerned. But in the future, we got to get ahead of these things and be in front of them so that we can explain this to our citizenry, and that we're not after the fact going, okay, yeah, well, the millage rate's going to raise. Well, why didn't we talk about this before? That's all I really have to say on the subject.
Well, discussion at the moment?
Yes, I'd like to say a few more things, if I may. I work in my yard all the time, and people will go by and they stop and they'll see me out there and we'll talk. And this past week, I've had a couple of neighbors come by. And they do have some concerns, and I just wanted to address them to let you know what they were saying, okay? The remark was made, we've obtained a bank loan of $15 million, with the $7.5 million going towards the road work on Crystal Island, okay? And since I was with the other residents, and we're all looking forward to having this completed, which everyone is very excited, thinking that this is going to finally happen. But I do have concerns, since we were lacking a public works director to oversee this project. And hopefully we've got something in the works for that, okay? I do not want the same thing to happen to us on Crystal Island that happened to the residents over on 137th. Near the church by the sea, the roads are torn up so bad, they can't drive their cars home. They got to park them at the parking lot at the church and walk to their houses. I don't want that to happen to us. I just want to make it clear that the roads need to be done with very little or no downtime to the residents, and their convenience is the most priority right now. With that being said, there is a lot of money in taxes that this is a lot of money, and taxes haven't been raised in over 4 years. But again, no major projects have been done during this time neither. My thoughts on this, as the conversation with the residents were coming around, we need to get more aware of what is being spent here in the city. We need to manage our money better. And this very well, over the last couple of years, it was either bad decisions, bad advice, or it could have been both that caused us to spend so much money. At this time, well, I'll skip that part for now. But these are some of the remarks that they were talking about, and they are concerned. And I just wanted to share it with you. We've got a lot of good people out there, and they work very hard, and they need to be taken care of. And again, hopefully the people over on 137th will soon have their roads completed, and they'll be able to drive their cars home. I believe the last meeting we had where that man came up, he said it was going to be a month before they were able to take their cars back to their houses. And again, like I said, this can't happen. You get someone on Johns Pass Avenue, and let's say they got to park up at Church by the Sea. That's a long walk home. You know, if they're carrying groceries, going to work, coming home from work, and it's raining, we just have to be more vigilant on this.
I agree.
Okay? Thank you.
All right, I'll open up for public.
Yes, I'd like to make a few comments, please. Yes, when I look at the whole picture of how we got to where we are now, I'm certain that many past budgets have included extensive road improvements for city streets, and money was set aside in the Capital Improvement Projects Fund to help road projects become a reality. In the 40 years I've lived here, every person campaigning for an elected office has promised that road improvements are their very first priority. Whatever happens, roads need to be done. But when elected, the promises are gone with the wind, and when potholes get big enough, they're just filled in, or slurry is put down, and the roads are not really done. But there has been some paving done. You know, the Bogosiaga project, the Bogosiaga neighborhood, was completed in February 2018. Some people are still out to lunch on that project because of I guess, how they feel it wasn't done right, or the city properly maintaining the maintenance on it. And Rex Place was finished in 2018, and 137th Circle and Church by the Sea is being improved now. But the point is, whoever was at fault, for whatever reasons, our roads are deteriorating at an alarming rate. I mean, I walk the streets every day, and I see it. I've been walking the streets for years and years and years. All promises and no actions have led backwards. And we're, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I just felt very strongly that, I feel very strongly that the buck needs to stop with this commission. And I think we've done a big effort to secure this $15 million loan. And I think the one big reason that I support the project is because we have made that commitment, okay? The Board of Commissioners has made that commitment that that $15 million bank loan go in a designated fund that may be used for only these road improvement projects. No money may be borrowed from this amount of money for any other city project, and that's right. I mean, that we've got that tied up. And when I think about it, that may be a reason that some past projects have run amok and not been even started, that monies were borrowed from sources and diverted to other city projects. But I do believe that that situation can't come to haunt us now. I mean, it can't come back to haunt us because this money will be in a special fund and it will not be diverted, and that's why I'm so strong on it. I do think that, like we've talked about before, that, you know, we've got new people coming into Madeira Beach, they're improving properties, we have redeveloping going on, and there's more day and longer-term tourists that are coming to our beaches. More people are using our roads. I think the city has the obligation and the responsibility to provide decent roads for the safety and welfare of all the citizens, businesses, and visitors. That's what a city is supposed to do, provide those services. And I do believe, I feel really strongly that, you know, we need to see that. I know I've ranted and raved in the past, just sitting out, you know, in the audience about any increases in millage. 5, 10, 20 years ago, probably, I was still carrying on, but all that's just living in the past. I also felt when I was doing this consideration that certainly there will be citizens who are going to find this, even though it might be just $90 or $165 on their annual tax bill, it'll be an additional burden because a lot of people do live on fixed incomes. However, I believe we have to complete this project for future generations, and that's what a city's supposed to do. Thanks.
Floor is now open for public comment.
Doreen Moore, 13019 Boca Ciega Avenue. As a member of, and I'm not speaking for the entire budget committee, but I'm speaking for myself as having been a member of that for the last 2 years. And this group spent a lot of hours, a lot of meetings, to be able to bring information forward, information that was shared by various staff members, prior administration, our current interim city manager, and certainly our finance director. So I just wanted to make a couple comments because certainly both Mr. Daniels and Walt in terms of finance can't cover everything. So there just were some things that I just wanted to mention, questions that you all have had and questions we heard from residents. Why did we take all this money at once? Why was the $15 million put into the bank? Well, on the budget committee, we were brought various options on borrowing money. The research was done by finance and brought forward. It would have been great if we could have gotten a line of credit and we could have used what we needed at the time and paid only the amount that we borrowed. But the interest rate on that line of credit and the terms on the line of credit was much higher. So there were, we as a group and as advisory to you as the BOC, we weighed all those options and we looked at that, and our financial advisor, the city finance, he came and did those presentations, and some of you as BOC members were there and certainly had the opportunity. It was very informative. So the other thing I wanted to touch on, mentioning about grants, and I hope I'm not just stuck on my 3 minutes, but I'll try to be quick. They did do research. Your engineering firm, your lobbyist, all of these people did research on these grants. And for the residents, they may not be aware that there was the possibility of doing the pervious surface out on Crystal Island. Swift Mud would have participated in that, but it wouldn't work from an engineering standpoint. They went out and they did the testing. So maybe the residents don't know that, but there was a lot of work by your staff, by the consultants, to determine that. So the idea that nobody looked at grants, The lobbyist firm, they had been out there looking, and there was something that was brought to our attention that there were things that were lined up on a state level where we thought that the communities and the cities were going to be able to obtain funding, maybe not necessarily for the streets, but then we had the terrible occurrence of Parkland, and everything just kind of dried up. So lobbyists weren't able to acquire or obtain, and cities, were kind of, that fell off the top of the list. So that was my short list, and just wanted to share that the group put a lot of effort into that. I don't want to think that it's just you, the BOC, that you read the reports and the residents don't realize that there were a lot of hours and digestion by a team to support you so you can make decisions. Thank you.
My name's Roger Pryor, 223 144th Avenue. Yes, I'm part of the Budget Committee as well, and we decided, yes, we'll need the money, we'll do the right thing with that, and we'll come out here and we'll build some roads, et cetera. Now, what we've asked for is that we tentatively agree to a millage rate increase of to 2.75. However, my understanding is that we don't have to spend it all. That's our maximum. But let me bring a couple of things up that kind of shock me every time I go through them, okay? First off, we've had projects. We had Rex Place. It was originally on the books for $350,000. The next thing we saw in the budget was at $600,000. Then it went $950,000. It ended up at $1,023,000 when we finished. How many of you approved those changes? How many of you know what changes were made? What is the process for the bid committee? I've got a list here of bid committee people. How many bid committee people are in here can tell me what happened to that money? That's $700,000. You got the one here that Mr. Walt said that they overspent by $373,000. So when you add that to the $700,000, it's over $1 million that seems to be unaccounted for. If we go out here and do these other roads the same way without some oversight and people knowing what the hell they're doing, why don't they overspend the same way? If you go from $350,000 to $1 million something, that is over 200% overage. Who can tell me why? Now that's $1 million. We get through with this $15 million, it may cost us $30 because we don't know what we're doing. Let me say one more thing about impact fees. We're sitting out here, we've got two big developments. We've got the city center, we have Lever Rocks. When you do the contract work on those, they have impact fees of $1 million each. Barefoot Beach down here is people are in it now. How much impact fee do we get out of it? I know that's an old tune that I keep harping on, okay? But it looks like you're pissing away $1 million a year or $2 million because we're not doing our work on impact fees. I'm not trying to rob the developers. Okay, the developers are great. Everything's here. I'm not anti-development. I am pro-Madeira Beach. Okay? So my question is, how many of these jobs, you got the $15 million, how many of these jobs are shovel ready? When are we going to start them? When are we going to finish them? We got money in the bank. I do want to offer you one thing. I have an extensive background in construction and engineering of public works and highways and roads. And if you like, I'll end my budget work and get onto that, and I'll do it for free. If you'd like for me to be the overseer for that, not as a city employee, but as a volunteer, and I'll be the committee. So if you have a bid committee, that's well and good. I'll be glad to join them and do whatever, but we're going to have some oversight, okay?
Robert Preston, 425 South Bay Shore Drive, Madeira Beach. Just one thing, a little bit of history. Almost 2 years ago when the commission was elected, during that period of time, they paid down with a balloon payment on a loan that was less than half in the loan that they're taking right now. And they made a balloon payment on it. That doesn't make any sense at all. the interest rate was less than half. It didn't do any good for the loan, didn't do any good for the city, but you paid down on it because you were so pissed about this city property right here. The other thing that I have is Mr. Pryor talked quite a bit about the projects and the project's overruns. If we go like we have on Rex Place and 137th, the Crystal Isle project is going to be $10.5 million. Are you prepared for that? That's what it's going to be. Because history tells us that we don't get very good bids, and we don't hold the contractors to the bid that they make and make sure that they do the job. There's something wrong with that picture. You go have a house built, and the contractor says, okay, I can build this house for $300,000. And then he says, well, before you can move in, you got to pay me $400,000. I don't think so. Something wrong with that picture. Rex Place, 137th, I walked on it the other day. They're tearing up curbs and stuff that they just put in. They've run their big heavy equipment on the pervious asphalt and cracked it. Who's going to pay for those repairs? Who pays for that? Who's responsible for that? I know that we have a city engineer that's supposed to be looking over that or whatever the case may be, but it looks to me like we're not getting our money's worth. You know? You go order a car, and the car's going to cost you $36,000. And you go to pick it up and say, geez, you don't owe me $36,000. You owe me $48,000. That's just not the way things are due. These contracts, these people need to be held to their contracts. And it's beside me that these cost overruns are like this. It's amazing. It's like throwing money away. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, in the interest of transparency, because I have heard some comments about particularly the undergrounding utilities, that project is about $300,000 away from being completed. And I've already sent a reimbursement to Pinellas County for the Penny Pinellas meet for almost $1.1 million just within the last 2 weeks. So that project is coming to an end, and we're about $300,000 away from that project being completed. That's another project where we waited too long, and you can point fingers all you want. You know, I think we've learned some lessons. But as Mr. Andrews said, we can't wait. We got to be more proactive. I don't want anybody to think that the board didn't approve some of these increases. You did. And I was there for some of them. But there still is the fact that, you know, the longer we wait, the longer the higher these construction costs are going to be. And so we've learned a lesson on some of these, on these 3 projects. I know I've learned a lesson. And if you can learn something from it and try to do a better job, then that's the key thing.
Hello again, Chuck Dillon, 529 Lillian Drive. As I'm looking at these papers, I want to give you guys a kudos, and just as a matter of, if I'm understanding this right, we did get a $15 million loan, but we're making 2.4% interest, and we're paying 3.7. So guys, to me, that sounds like we're doing okay. So we got a $15 million loan, and we're paying 0.6%. So that's why they went out and did the big bucks for the money. Now, on the other side, the overrun, I mean, I don't know who the city engineer is. If the city engineer is the person that was responsible for the Bogosiega Bay road project, they failed miserably. And I don't know if anybody's gone on those streets, and I talked to them at one of the last meetings. all those streets are cracking. They're cracking, they're falling apart, and you're continuing to do the thing on 137th. It doesn't work. We're in a low floodplain area. It does not work. And I did talk to whatever engineer it was here, and he said that yes, the Crystal Island project does not meet that same criteria. Well, hallelujah, it would fail. And I don't know where this city engineer is, but I understand he's a subcontractor or he's a contractor for us. So is he our engineer or is he a contractor? And the bridge that was approved, $300 and some thousand, that they were out there 4 or 5 days and they got $300,000 worth of work done, I didn't see it. So once again, as some of the people said, there needs to be some people that know what they're doing. I mean, you got this man, Roger, who's been doing this. I did road constructions up in St. Louis for 18 years. You've got a lot of people that know what should be done. And I don't know that the engineer or whatever the city engineer really is the city's best interest in heart. The more the money he estimates the project, the more he gets paid. So there's a lot of good, but there's a lot of questionable things here too. Thank you for your time.
Mayor, Commissioners, Jeff Beggins. I live on 429 BOC Drive, and I have no problem with the infrastructure. I'm a huge proponent of preparing for growth and doing the things the city needs to do. My big concern is, I always have a kind of a statement in my head for business, is be quick, but don't hurry. Right? I understand the need to get things done, but the BOC project is not good. Right? It's sloppy. The curbs look like crap. You walk it all the day. Right? That's cracking. It's uneven, it's embarrassing, right? And frankly, we can do a lot better, and to just hurry to get a same half-assed project done somewhere else just to check a box of a campaign promise isn't good enough, because we're gonna have to do it again, right? We know the facts are, we're gonna have to do Boca Ciega again. Where the money's coming from, who knows? But why don't we wait, do it right, get some people who really, really, really know what they're doing, and then see if we can find some grants. And while the road's ripped up, let's put the utilities down at the same time so we don't have to rip them up twice, right? If the residents will sit back and wait to know that there's a plan in place to do things right, and I think we'd rather have it done right the first time than half-assedly a couple times. So I'm all for the infrastructure improvements. I'm all for doing what you need to do with the millage. I get it. You guys know what you're doing on that point. I'm just saying, don't waste money and take time and think it through, and let's do it right, and let's figure out the sidewalks and the undergrounding and the landscaping and the curbs and the backflow valves. And come on, you walk through a high tide, we still have floods on the street we just paid millions of dollars to fix. That's not right. So my vote is do it, but don't do it until you really know what it is, and somebody who knows what it really is in charge of it. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Real quick, Walt, I would like a clarification. Just when we talk about city engineer, Al's not really technically a city engineer, is he? He's
The board did approve Al as the city's engineer.
oh, just for this project, or to be able to use it as a generic term?
He was designated as that by the board. It might have been before you started, Commissioner.
Okay, yeah, I just had no idea. I just wanted clarification. Thanks.
If I may, Walt, I think we have two engineers. There's a process that you have to go through to vet contractual engineers, and it's not one firm, it's two firms. And Mr. Tart is in charge of the project that's on Gulf Boulevard, and I don't know how the delineation was made because I wasn't here, but there are two official city engineers currently doing work for the city.
And some of the work that in Public Works, Al Carrier has been, the city engineers, or one of them has been helping out in that area as well.
Does anybody else wish to speak?
We've missed you, Rees.
Reese Noren, 363 Medallion Boulevard, still your closest neighbor. I've listened to the reasons presented. Some of them have facts, some of them have opinions, some of them have hope, some of them have pessimism. As I've said when I've been up here before, I don't envy any of your job. You're faced with a intolerable position because anything that can be done better. That's my school of thought. That's my experience in life. As a naval aviator, I have other sins too. I'm also, for some reason or other, they gave me a degree in electrical engineering, like the other gentleman. We have squandered our budget. We have painted ourselves in the corner where now there may not be anything we can do except raise the millage rate. But it's totally unnecessary. It didn't have to happen. We have wasted money, and I will give you all the facts to support because I deal in facts. I like to stick with facts. Everybody has an opinion. I'm not exempt from having one also, but rather than my opinion, I'd like to put out two facts to support the waste of money. The first one was the forensic examination. Money was requested to have an audit, and the money was granted to have an audit, but an audit was not requested. A forensic examination investigation was what was requested, what was received, and what was paid for. That was $50,000 that was referred to as a drop in the bucket. If you'd like to put one of those drops in my bucket, I'm available. The other practice is the electrical for emergency procedures is $340,000. So if you put those two together, you're looking at $390,000 that didn't have to be spent, not a dime of it. You already had enough to run a command post in the event that power is not available, and to keep every light bulb lit and every room air conditioned when there's no power available to all of the citizens because of an emergency that happens is ridiculous and not necessary. Those are things that you can revisit. At least the electrical one, I would suggest that you look at that closely. You have an electrical engineer on board. You have enough to do what needs to be done in the case of an emergency. You don't have to air condition every closet in an emergency. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak? The floor is now closed for public comment. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Budget Committee. I mean, you've done a tremendous job. That's a lot of work, and I think we all really appreciate it. And I know nobody likes it, but sometimes it's necessary to raise taxes to make our city the best that it can be. So that's what we're here today to decide what to do.
Yes, Mayor, I would like to make a motion if we're ready. I'd like to make a motion to set the maximum millage rate for fiscal year 2020 to 2.75. That's an increase of 0.50 over the current 2.2.
Do we have a second?
I just got lost on what she just said.
Pardon?
What did you say that again, please?
I said I would like to make a motion to set the maximum millage rate for fiscal year 2020 to 2.75 maximum. Remember, we can lower it, but we can't put it up. 2.75, which is an increase of 0.50 over the current 2.55.
.55.
I'm sorry, 0.55. Yeah,
That's why I was getting
sorry.
lost.
I had written 4.55. I just
Okay.
said it wrong. Sorry.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion?
I would just like to make a remark that we need to work harder and smarter at what we're doing. We need to bring revenue back into the city. And new development creates growth, and growth will bring revenue back to the city. And that's my comment right there. I don't agree with the 2.75, but I'm only one person. I would go the 2.5.
We have a first and we have a second. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Weinstein,
Yes.
Commissioner Douthat,
Yes.
Commissioner Andrews.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hodges,
No.
Mayor Black.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, before you adjourn, I just want to indicate that the board has a budget workshop on next Tuesday at 2 o'clock. And just a reminder, we're going to have just a recap of some of the recommendations by the Budget Committee, and then 2 more. And then if you could bring your budget document that was provided at the last workshop, and the board will have an opportunity to ask one more time any of the department heads, any questions that they might have. And there was some additional information that some of the commissioners made at the last meeting. We'll be providing that information as well.
Very
Walt,
good.
we don't have a meeting next Tuesday. It's the following Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month, which is the 13th.
This is the August 6th.
Yeah, he just set one. It's in this calendar here.
So we're doing the workshop on the first Tuesday now, not the second Tuesday?
If I may, this is just for the budget purpose. As we get through the budget season, we have workshops to make sure that he can correctly prepare the tentative budget for your review. So I'm sorry we're meeting you to death, but they're necessary to make sure that we air out all the parts of the budget so there's an understanding both for the Board of Commissioners and for the residents.
And as an interim city manager indicated, I promised this meeting will be short and brief.
That would be a first.
But we just want to give you one more chance and share additional information. And again, at the last meeting, there were 3 or 4 things that some of the commission asked for information, and we'll be providing that too at that time.
Okay.
I thought before we close, City Manager, I thought it was very interesting to add another committee, and be it the Oversight Committee. Can the city put out an announcement to get resumes for people who would like to be on an Oversight Committee to oversee these projects that are going on? We have 2 people right here that have engineering degrees and worked in that kind of stuff, and if, to get these people involved, I think, some of these overruns are really kind of crazy, but we get put in a corner sitting up here sometimes where, they were talking about Rex Place starting at 300,000, and jumped, but they come to us and they say, well, if you don't do this, Rex Place is not going to get finished. So how we get to the point that we can't say no a lot of times because we get pushed back into the corner that if we don't say yes, the people that live on that particular area are going to be hurt, So maybe this Oversight Committee is something that can help us to work through some of these problems and come back and say, hey, and I think another good point that was brought up is the holding these contractors to the bid, holding their feet to the fire, and that has not been done. And, and I know things happen no matter what you do. You take your car in and you go, oh, I'll have an oil change, and before you walk out of there, you put on new brakes and this and that and everything else, you know, and that happens, I understand that. But it shouldn't happen at the regularity that it's happening right now on Madeira Beach, so.
Well, Commissioner, maybe we should, at our agenda-setting meeting on August the 13th, put that on a workshop for the August workshop, perhaps.
But let them put the announcement out now, rather than waiting 2 weeks. Just asking, you know, for people who would be interested is what all I'm asking. They put out an announcement, if someone is interested, let's get some names and start thinking about it. So at the workshop, then we can talk about it.
Well, but we really, well, I don't know. I just felt like we really haven't, I guess, had our own thoughts together as to what kind of a committee, you know, that would entail and stuff. And I would think that it would be the first step to put it on a workshop, but whatever.
Yeah, and John, I agree with you. I think it's something we need to do, but I think we do have to set parameters on what we're actually looking for before we just ask for resumes, and we need to do that during a workshop. That's just my opinion. The other thing is, I think, first and foremost, before we get an oversight committee, we need a public works director, because we've got a lot of projects we got some continued projects, and we've got some projects coming up that are big, that we need somebody that's overseeing them. And then we can have an oversight committee that helps out and does that, but we need somebody that's committed to actually getting these projects done and getting them done on time. And as far as, Walt, you know, I think everybody's bringing up a pretty good point. Can you get us some of the information? I wasn't on the board then, but some of the information on, and we'll just use Rex Place for an example, why that went over. And I think, I know one of the reasons why it did, I think it was earmarked for 300 grand, but when we actually went to bid with the changes that we made initially, even before the project started, it was 600 and change. And I don't know, I have absolutely no idea what happened from the 600 to 1.052, but I think just the placeholder was 300 grand. I think we can throw that number out, but from 600 to a little over $1 million, we should probably know what happened. And John's right, we shouldn't be painted into a corner, not knowing exactly what went on. I'm sure, you know, I'm sure there's legitimate reasons behind it, but we do have to hold the contractors accountable to their bids.
If I may, you're right. It starts with the RFP going out, making sure that we're asking for what we really want up front, and then going ahead and reviewing the contracts, not only on a legal review, but on a practical review. You know, how do we handle those overruns? One of the major ones that you have is weather, okay? And so acts of nature usually are addressed in a contract, but there are other things I'm sure that are going on that maybe we don't know about. But, and to get back to your suggestion on the Public Works Director, that ad should be out on Friday. So I am moving forward on that. But my plans are to monitor the situation from the get-go with the contracts, the projects, and I do like the idea of having some other type of citizen involvement on the oversight, but with specific goals on what we want to accomplish. I want to make sure we don't interfere with the contractors, but also have an opportunity for somebody else that has an engineering degree to hear what I'm getting as information. So I think that feedback for me would be most helpful as well. So I appreciate you all stepping up.
There being no further business, we are adjourned at 7:09.